Hey, comic book friends, Sleepy Reader here. I am back briefly. I once again have to keep an eye on the time because I'm going to go pick up my daughter. I've got about 30 minutes, I think. So, maybe 25. Been wanting to do comic book thoughts more frequently. Anyway, excuses as always. Really busy, kind of deconstructing my life. You can see that empty shelf there. There's my dead computer over there. I need a new hard drive for it. It's a Mac that's 6 years old, so I need to arrange to take it somewhere, and they probably need to order a special hard drive. And I'm going to be going on a 2-week trip, so I'm not going to be fixing that computer till January. So much has been going on. Moving, as some of you may have heard, to a house that's still kind of being worked on, so we're still living in our house, but anyway, my wife wants all the stuff cleared out of this room so that people can look at the walls, because apparently there might be stuff that needs repairing. So my comic book room goes first. So before I pack up all this stuff into some boxes, I thought I'd give you a few thoughts. And first of all, I had an interesting experience. Maybe other people who do channels where you kind of review comics may have experienced this too, where you get people who are producing their own comics requests asking if you would cover their comic on your videos, and I don't usually do that. But this guy named Matt Lesniewski, Matt Lesniewski, contacted me, and rather than sending me a PDF, he sent me a link to a website where I could read his comic book for free. I had time right at that moment, and I clicked on it, and I looked at it, and I really liked the art. It was this comic book, and it's got black and white art. And I read a page or so, and it seemed perfectly fine, and then I kind of scrolled through the art, and I really liked it, and I said to myself, and there was an option to order physical copies, so you can read it free, and if you like it, order a physical copy. I felt like I would really like it, and I wanted to read it in my hands as a physical item, so I went to his store and bought his 2 comics. They were $3 each, but then the postage brought the cost of these 2 up to $7. But in the end, I feel pretty good about that. I mean, I'm supporting someone who probably makes nothing off of these, or next to nothing, I would assume at this point, but who has a really unique style and kind of a unique voice. He's got a lot of what you might call intricate line work detail. He doesn't use any heavy inks. I'm not sure if there's a philosophy there to that, or I don't know. It's very tempting to want to add color to these, but even so, despite that, and sometimes I have struggles with black and white art, I really like his black and white art. So this is an older comic of his called Alone Again. It's a one-shot. It's in a post-apocalyptic world, and the angle is this guy is an extreme introvert. He doesn't want to hang out with people, and everyone goes in gangs to survive during this apocalypse. We never learn what caused the apocalypse or anything like that, but we don't need to. But the feeling of the apocalypse really comes alive, and the sense of the character's sort of quiet preference for aloneness really comes through. I mean, it's a pretty unique story. You don't see many stories about introversion done in a science fiction setting, done this way. So I really like the story. It kind of wrapped up in an okay way. But other than that, it was a really good comic. And then Antique is one of 4. So he's working on issue 3 now. I think he's working on issue 3 now, and issue 2 will be coming to print soon, and I will definitely want to get the whole series. It takes place in some very grim but not quite defined sort of medieval fantasy world where this woman who lives alone is selling off her last goods to buy food, and the last thing she has is this ancient antique sword, and she goes to pawn it, and events lead to the fact that the guy at the pawn shop, rather than have her sell it to him, offers her a job, claiming that, you know, with the use of this magic sword, she'll be able to collect on money owed to him, or some magic, I think it was some kind of item. No, a great deal of money. Okay. And so it's a bit mysterious why the pawn shop guy offers her to do that, and I don't know if we'll ever get an explanation of that, but he sends along his employee, who turns out to be a really good fighter, along with her. And they leave the city out into some creepy magical woods, and the cliffhanger, well, I won't give away anything yet. But anyway, they meet something interesting in the woods, and then that's the end of this issue. And Matt Lesniewski, I guess these ones have gray tones. That's interesting. I might ask him if he was intending to do gray tones in this one, or if I'm not sure which I like better, whether I like the gray tones or not. But I think he has a really cool, kind of unique style. He's not directly imitating any big time American artist, that's for sure. I don't know if there's, you know, some European interest or influences here, but I feel like I'm reading someone who, in story and art, is going his way and doing a really good job at it. And so I'm really quite excited to have discovered Matt's comics. And when I get time, I'll put a link below where you can read his stuff for free and order it if you're interested. So on to the more mainstream indies. I just read 2 issues of Lake of Fire. This started off, you know, in issue 1 really strong, and it continues on with all its characters and its situation, but it does feel more like a bloody action science fiction horror thriller like Aliens, set in the medieval times. It has more of that movie feel as we go along, a little more feeling like it's a pitch for a movie, but still with lots of cool touches. The characters are all very well drawn in the writing sense. Their characteristics of who they are all come out really well. I think I was getting a little confused between the different young knights, and I might need to go back to remind myself who is who. Like, I think one is a prince and the others are his friends, or they aren't even knights yet, they're squires. Anyway, this continues to be really good. I'm glad it's a mini series. I think I'll find it more satisfying than something drawn out. They could return to this world, and that would be great. But this is Nathan Fairbairn's first writing on a comic, and it's excellent. The colors, of course, are great because Nathan Fairbairn is the colorist. He got his start as a colorist, and this is his first writing gig. You can see he kind of goes for consistency of tone on groupings of pages in terms of the color. But even as a kind of movie, certain amount of an action movie cliche, but during the period of the Crusades, it kind of stands out, and it is a really fun comic to read. Arclight, finally out. I think the first 2 issues came out as 8 House 1 and 2 a year and a half ago, or a little more. And I wasn't sure if I was going to regret having put it on my pull list. You know, maybe it was, you know, all the rest of the 8 House was not that good or did not click. And I remember Arclight was very mysterious, and this continues to be mysterious, and it probably would help if I went back and read the previous issues. But there's also something delicious, and for lack of a better word, it reminds me of the pacing and plotting of a Mobius kind of story, ones where he writes himself, where it feels like there's a reason behind everything, but you're not told all the reasons, and that there's a real world here. There's the strange thing of the character arc, like looking totally like a woman. Rez says that she saw him without a shirt on in this issue, but it must have been a different issue because I don't see that here. And there's a number of characters who dress like men but look like women, and I'm not sure what we're supposed to think they are. There's a few characters who are obviously men, like that fellow there with the darker skin. He's got very much the brow of a man and the posture of a man, and I think the shoulders of a man. Yeah, his shoulders are drawn a bit broader than the others. So that's mysterious. And then there's this enchanted lady, and she is just sort of a fascinating fantasy image. And she goes through a portal and, visits this magical place and gets advice from these gods of death. Or I don't know if it's really advice or orders or what have you. But anyway, it's so cool, and it's just drawn with the right amount of confidence and everything that I'm really enjoying Arclight. I think Arclight is good for lack of a better word, people who are into that kind of Mobius or heavy metal feel of things where not everything's going to be explained, or you have to sit back and wait, and it's going to be a long time figuring it out. So hopefully the issues will come out more often so we can remember what's happened and piece together what Brandon Graham's intentions are. Let's see. Britannia number 3 was slightly better than other issues just because the coloring was not quite as muddy, although obviously it's still very dark. It's hard to see how this is going to wrap up satisfyingly in 4 issues. Maybe it's something where they're going to do 4 issues and then another 4 issues. I still wish the coloring suited the artwork a little better, but it's definitely, it's an interesting story. It's hard to fully grasp because there's a detective who's, kind of like a Roman Sherlock Holmes, but then there's all this superstitious stuff that's kind of overwhelms the sense of detectiveness. And then they're just plain vicious, bloody, awful Romans. So you don't really care the fate of the Romans. Who do you care about? Just this Roman detective? And the only reason to care about him is he seems slightly nicer than other people, but he represents Rome's interests, which seem totally corrupt. Saga. Just last issue, I was mentally renaming Saga Soap Opera, and then in this issue, all kinds of interesting twists happened, including the final twist, so that the shocker here was not the kind of shocker that they normally have, but it still, in a sense, shocked me more than some of their recent sexual attempts at sexual shockers. I kind of want to spoil the last page to discuss it, but I won't. But this kind of also indicates that we're moving into a higher level of science fantasy, space fantasy kind of wildness. And I feel like Saga really needs an injection of that. I didn't realize that's what it needed, but once it has it, I want, oh yeah, more of that, please. Everyone I know is loving Black Hammer. I'm loving Black Hammer. It was great to have this issue about this spaced out commander. The art was wonderful. The characters continue to be really fun and interesting, and I continue to just hope this comic book just keeps going at this pace, feels no rush, and just explores its characters and situations. Now, talk about really great coloring. Dave Stewart is always a good colorist, but I feel like he's really rocking things really well in Black Hammer. This might be one where I'd be tempted to get it digitally also, just to absorb the art and color in a different way. Reborn, very cool art, pretty cool color. It's weird seeing Capullo go full on in fantasy world, but just because I think of him as the hard edge Gotham guy, but it works really well. Um, I guess there's probably a new one of these coming out tomorrow, maybe. I'm really interested to see. I'm pretty sure there's got to be a twist here. There's little moments where we get that the idea that the father is lying to her or hiding something very important from her. In fact, maybe that was a little too obvious. This close-up on his eye as he stands there silently while she's saying, all this time you've been looking for mom. You should get this more than anyone. Is there something about her mother that's going to be quite a revelation? Or is there a twist to this whole world? Isn't it kind of a coincidence that she's the savior of this world that they've all been awaiting? And yet, even though she's the savior, she says, well, I just want to go off and look for my husband. And people are okay with that. There's lots of cool touches. I think this is going to be 5 issues or 6 issues, which is the standard Mark Millar. I wouldn't be surprised if the last issue is double-sized and costs more, because that's also a standard Mark Millar trick. The bad guys are really evil here. So anyway, I feel like there's got to be something more. There's another layer or something that Millar is playing with, maybe 2 more layers even. It is kind of reminiscent of Birthright, which is a longer form story, but also about family and fantasy worlds and layers and revelations and things not being what they seem. Although it doesn't involve even though it's called Rebirth, it doesn't involve the afterlife the way Reborn does. I read Black issue 2. I think maybe issue 3 is about to come out too also. It was pretty good. I mean, I thought it was a good solid superhero comic. I still don't care a lot because it's so familiar and so cliched. And even though there's kind of racial stuff involved, I'd kind of hoped there would be something more radical in its approach. But its approach is very mainstream. Maybe that's a smart thing to do. But then you would think maybe they should have done it in color and presented it more like a Marvel comic rather than it looks kind of radical on the covers. Although this is a really awesome cover. I feel like maybe it's a pitch for a movie also. A movie idea or TV idea that didn't get off the ground, so they kickstarted it as a comic book. It's copyright just by the author. So Jamal Igle, who is the illustrator, I don't think, he's doing workman-like work. It's not up to the level of work I've seen him do on other things, especially stuff he owns, like, I forget what that one is called, about a superpowered girl that he did. He did it in album size. But, he doesn't do embarrassing work. He does very professional work. So yeah, it's kind of funny. Where is Black Mask Comics going? Is it going anywhere in particular? At first I thought it was really the home of kind of radical, in-your-face kind of comics with a certain almost modern, primitive approach in a way, most exemplified by Space Riders. But I think it's all over the place. No Angel, I guess, is written by someone from a TV show or something. I didn't even know that till after I read it. And I already have forgotten what TV show they said she was from. Like an actress from a TV show. This was much better, a much more powerful read with more effective art, in my opinion, than Black. It also was a lot like a really good supernatural thriller movie, the opening act of a supernatural thriller movie, but done really well. I'll be glad to get future issues. I love that color. I love that art. Again, I think the artist is a hired gun, and it's all copyright by Eric Palicki. So is it Adrienne Palicki, who is a well-known actress, and it's written by Eric Palicki and Adrienne Palicki, and copyright by Eric Palicki. When you have an artist this good, I feel like you should give them a share. But who knows? Who knows how much they developed before the artist got involved. It has a pretty clever twist for a supernatural thriller, but it's nothing radical. It is your standard natural thriller, with detectives and with a female detective. It feels like we've seen a number of those already in the past few years. There's that one at Vertigo, and then there's the one that Greg Rucka is doing right now. Was that called Black Magic? I can't remember. Let me see how I'm doing on time for my daughter. Okay, I got a few more minutes. I was excited that Love and Rockets came out with a #1, kind of a jumping on spot. My Love and Rockets reading has been spotty, to say the least, over the years. A really nice package, lots of great art, but totally not jump-in friendly. I sort of know who these characters are, but there's a lot that I couldn't parse or figure out, and I had trouble keeping track of the characters. But I love the art. But as a read, I don't know. I have to go back and reread some of it. Maybe go back and read some other Love and Rockets to remind myself. So maybe I'm going to keep getting it. It's on my pull if my shop doesn't goof it up. So maybe as I read more issues, I'll get more into it beyond the art and get into the writing. I think there's one story in here that I haven't read yet, in fact. So, yeah. Okay, quickly, Superman meeting Frankenstein Agent of Shade was fun. A little bit, not at quite a high level as most of the issues of Superman have been. It was more your standard two heroes meet and fight because they won't explain to each other what's going on. And then your typical modern comic, a revelation right on the last page that apparently changes everything. Although it didn't mean a whole lot to me, it just seemed like, look, I was right all along. It's something horrible. And also, actually, I was surprised by the Doug Mankey art. Before the superheroics started, it felt like very kind of weak, bland art. It wasn't colored very well either, both of which surprised me because I've liked Mankey's art. Like the last time he drew Frankenstein Agent of Shade and the other issues of Superman, this Superman he's drawn. There's 2 inkers on here, so that might be part of it. Will Quintana, colorist. I don't have any memory of not liking Will Quintana's coloring before, but anyway, it all got better once the superhero part started. Nightwing, Welcome to Bloodhaven. I don't know much about Bloodhaven, but this was a pretty good story as far as I could tell. But the art and especially the coloring, I used to hate a lot of the coloring in the computer age, and then it seemed like coloring got really good, but lately I've been hitting a lot of coloring that has seemed to me to kind of really poorly serve the artwork. The wide variety of coloring options in computer coloring can mean you can go way wrong or way right, I guess. Of course, there's no one right way, but this just didn't, to me, capture a very good tone for life in Bloodhaven and a Nightwing kind of adventure comic. Looks like the colorists were going for a really bright daylight time, but it kind of emphasized the lack of detail in a lot of the shots. Here's, I guess, the nighttime shot, and then we move into daytime. And the coloring was a bit better in all the nighttime scenes, but even there, the art was kind of eh. And I feel like I've liked Marcus Toe art before, but it just didn't grab me here. So kind of good story, but hopefully the good artist on Nightwing will be back eventually, which was, Fernando something. Gru, Fray of the Gods. I think there's just one more issue. This has been a lot of fun. Gru continues just to be great. I have the older issues that are on newsprint, and I do like Gru a lot better on the slick paper. I think he's well served by that, and the colors really pop. But another hilarious comic making fun of government and gods and people's gullibility. Not really of God at all, but of the idea of gods and that sort of thing. Okay, Moonshine number 2. I wonder if there's another. I think there's another Moonshine about to come out. Kind of the same story as Moonshine number 1. Pretty good, but not a lot to care about. Feels like the story as it is so far could end in about 3 more issues. It doesn't feel like a big complex story. There's not a lot of richness there. The characters are professionally drawn, professionally written, but they aren't anything special. Wonder Woman, I don't know what it is, but I keep not getting into this. There'll be an issue or 2, I'll start getting into it, and then I stop getting into it again. We seem to be in this abstract dream version of Themyscira where everything's slightly wrong, and that's in itself kind of interesting, but somehow the writer and the artist didn't pull me into it so well, maybe particularly the writer, because there's a lot of cool art here, but it's maybe more illustrative art. There's less storytelling going on, either in the writing or in the art, or both. I don't know which. Coloring's kind of interesting. Love that cover. So, I don't know. I want to have a great Wonder Woman comic, but I keep thinking about what Rebirth comics I need to drop so that I have enough time to read the other comics, and Wonder Woman might be one of them. Action comics I'm really enjoying. I'm enjoying the twists with Luthor. I think as long as they keep the Luthor thing going here, it's going to be a really strong series. And eventually, of course, they have to undo the Luthor thing, but, they'll reset the clock eventually to Luthor being clearly the bad guy and not trying to be Superman, I suppose. But it's going to be a really fun ride while it lasts. The artwork at times looked odd. This Superman looks like he's made of a series of balloons to me. Maybe the coloring's a bit odd too. The colorists really go for kind of a painted look. And that might be wrong for Superman for me. But I still really enjoyed this issue. Apparently this kind of is a repeat of the plot of the Darkseid War, maybe? Or somehow tied into that, but I haven't read the Darkseid War yet. I'd planned to read it in trade, but I've been too busy reading other stuff. Titans, am I getting used to the Brett Booth art and the Norm Ratmund inking? It's not bothering me as much, or maybe the story is just fun enough and fast moving enough that I, no pun intended, because a lot of it centers on the Wally West Flash here, but I'm finding it okay. I was really bothered by the art style when this started, and if I look at the individual panels, it still looks pretty darn goofy. But I continue to get that. Okay, I'm gonna have to leave. So really quickly, I'm still enjoying Detective Comics. I feel like Batman is not really part of the DC universe anymore. He's there. He's part of the DC universe. He's not a central character in any comic book anymore. He's a tangential character, it feels like. Everybody's looking at Batman from other angles than Batman himself. I really like Detective Comics, but more for the ensemble cast than for Batman. And New Superman has some fun twists and still has great art. I'm still really enjoying that. Okay, I gotta scram. I will upload this video later today, and I'm not sure if I'll have time to make another video before I'm off to jolly old England for 2 weeks. Talk to y'all later.